Teaching and Learning Committee to order February 26th at 5:30 p.m. Item 2, roll call. Ms. Higginbotham.
Here.
Mr. Pollak. Here. Mr. Ewart here. Agenda revisions and approval, item number 3.
Make a motion to approve the agenda and revisions.
Second.
Higginbotham with the motion, Mr. Pollak with the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Item 4, approval of January 22nd committee meeting minutes.
Move to approve January 22nd, 2024 committee meeting minutes.
I will second.
Mr. Pollak with the motion, Ms. Higginbotham with the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Item 5, reports and updates. We have Mr. Miziak with us. Item A, 3-year school library plan. Looks like we have a team with us.
This is the third committee in a row that I'm bringing special guests, and tonight I have 2 for you. Aaron Gaskill and Jeff Schreiber are here tonight. They are our librarians, and they're going to present to you the 3-year library plan. This is a part of the Wisconsin State School District standards that we're required to have on file and have approved by the board a 3-year long-range library plan. So what Mr. Gaskill and Mr. Schreiber have created for you is a outline for our 3-year plan. It was based off of what's called the Future Ready Framework. So there are different sections to the pie that's presented here, and what they'll do is they'll walk through this library plan with you tonight, and then following that plan, they're going to highlight one specific element of this library plan, which is an expansion of our elementary digital library. So I'm going to hand it over to them.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you for having us tonight as guests. As Jake said, which he really just summarized the top of the plan if you had a chance to look at it in your packets. Jeff and I, about 2 years ago probably, through DPI and an opportunity with them, were trained in the Future Ready Library Framework, which you see up there, which this plan follows, and I think it follows our board policy really well. I think you'll see good alignment with that as we go through. Our mission, if you would scroll down a little bit, basically is just to be the resource hub for all of our schools and our stakeholders in our schools, that being mainly our teachers and our students, really trying to make sure that we provide access to a wide variety of print and digital resources for them to support the teaching and learning goals of our district, not just within literacy, but really supporting all of our teachers, all of our content areas, and their instructional needs, as well as their student needs that come out of it. On that plan, you'll see that we have 2 licensed certified library media specialists, that being myself and Jeff, who's at the high school. We have assistants in our libraries at the middle school and high school level, and then we have our school library aides or assistants at each of our elementary schools. And I would say we have fantastic staff that work well together and provide for our students and teachers. Right, so what we'd like to do is just take you through the different wedges of that framework, just highlighting some key points, and then mainly we want to focus on our future areas for growth, because that's what this framework does, is it causes us to reflect on what are we doing currently, what are our practices that we do, which we're not really looking to change anything, make any earth-breaking changes, but there are always going to be areas for improvements and growth, and so that's what we'll see on the other side of the framework.
Yeah, thanks again for having us. Obviously, we put this together with the pie pieces, and when we worked with the DPI, when a lot of their suggestions were really to, when you make a goal, to focus on 1 or 2 key areas rather than trying to do everything at once. And so we took a look at some of the things that we do in each of these areas and then focused on 1 or 2 areas that we thought we could make some improvements in. The first piece of the pie, in no particular order, is curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And what it allowed us to do is take a look at our online catalogs, how well kids can access, and the community, teachers, anybody, access all of our materials. the collaboration that we have, a lot of the digital resources that we have. And so it focuses a lot on curating these digital resources and building the partnerships. As far as growth and things that we are working on, always to establish aligns with obviously what the district sets forth to us. And I think that's our number one thing. And we work very well with teaching and learning, and we have been actually, to set out the mission of what they're planning on doing so that we can support best what it is that they need. And so I think that we do a very good job in this area. We have a lot of good resources, and I think we work well as a team throughout the district to ensure that we follow this. Personal and professional learning is the next switch, and I thought
This is looking to make sure that we can support our students and our teachers in obviously extending and expanding their knowledge of not just the practices within their classrooms, but the resources that can help them extend what they do as well. So we provide on-demand library and technology support. Just had a music teacher come in today looking to know if there's any way that she can record her students performing a piece and then individually assess them. So knowing what kind of technology pieces we have in place to do that, how can they get it off of that device and into Google Classroom. That's where we come in to try and support and move forward those opportunities for our students and our teachers. So not just providing that for teachers, but also on demand as often as we can, students coming in with different opportunities for either assessment or learning, and they have an opportunity to do something different using technology or other resources. That's where we come alongside and try and create those opportunities for our students. In future areas for growth under there, our biggest challenge for Jeff and I has been covering and providing opportunities at the elementary level. And so you'll see that as a common theme because Jeff and I are housed at the middle school, high school, while we do travel and we oversee the operations within those libraries. It's really hard to provide that on-demand support. So we're looking to grow a tutorial collection for not only our students and our staff, but kind of be present as virtually as we can, knowing needs that are there.
The next piece of the pie is the infrastructure, and while we may not directly have a lot to do with that, I think the highlight of this is really our partnership with technology, our technology department, and we've always had a really good working relationship in whatever 15, 16 years that Aaron and I have been here. We've worked very well with the technology department to be sure that we collaborate with them and that they know what we need and that also, we know what they are looking for as well. And so this piece really is so that the IT department and our department work well together and collaborate so that we're sure everybody is getting what they need. And I think we've done a really good job of that as far as purchases and technology and supporting that. I think the district has done a very good job with that. The one-to-one initiative has been fantastic. And so the support, I think, in this category has been fantastic, and really it's just a matter of maintaining what we have and keeping the lines of communication open, more so than doing anything new.
Budget and resources, really just making sure that we are strategic and meeting the needs of, as Jeff said, all the different stakeholders areas in our buildings and at the district level, meeting those goals and coming alongside the different programming so we can support all of our schools, all of our teachers. The biggest piece under there on the left-hand side, and probably most important, is understanding our common school funds, and that's really our operating budget in terms of providing resources for our students and staff. And you can see on the plan we've linked all the different resources, the background, the guidelines for common school funds, and where that money comes from, as well as the criteria for spending that within our schools. It was created in 1848. It's a constitutionally created trust fund, so it's as old as our state is. And ever since, the proceeds of that trust fund have been directed towards school library aid. So anything that Jeff and I are budgeting for, planning for, it's all really coming out of that common school fund budget. So all of that, when we use and we apply that, we are always looking at the criteria for selection, which is in board policy. Jeff and I are very familiar with that, and I think you'll see that everything that we have really aligns with what the goal of the district is and the goal of the board as well. For future areas of growth, we're always looking to do an annual review of our collections to make sure that they match the needs of our teachers and our students. That's always a moving target based on different classroom goals, curriculum, teaching and learning goals. So we're always keeping an eye on that. Curating our library collections, print and digital, trying to make sure that we have equity. And again, that's where the elementary school piece is going to come in today as we present to you a proposal that Jeff and I would like to see to provide equity in the digital realm of our elementary school students, that being ebooks and audiobooks, and really creating a robust collection for them to access. Seeking additional funding, because common school funds can really only be used for a specific list of resources. We can use funding at times for things like student incentives, furnishings, equipment that don't meet the needs for that. And so as a future area for growth, we would look to seek additional funding through community partnerships. That's an area we'd like to establish as well.
All right, community partnerships. I think in the last probably 5 years or so, you've seen a lot bigger movement as far as involvement with the community libraries to try to sort of not merge resources, but making sure that we're sort of supplementing each other's stuff. And I think our community library is fantastic. They've done a great job in being supportive of us. They basically come to us, what do you need? Battle of the Books is a great example of something that just happened where they got to us early and said, we'll get you all these books that you need. Tell them, because we can't buy 5, 10, 15 copies of something, but they can get them through interlibrary loan. And so they're a great partnership for us. They come in, they drop summer book programs and winter book program leaflets and stuff in our libraries, and we let them put them in the library, and then seasonally they change it out. So it's been a really good partnership with them, and I think it's only growing, and that's something that we want to keep growing. As far as author visits, Aaron and I were just talking about, he's bringing in an author, Boswell Books, working together with local bookstores. About 7 years ago, I brought in author Andrew Marinas to the high school, who writes sports nonfiction, and I took money that I applied for the Germantown scholarship, teacher scholarship, and used that. So I think there's a lot of ways that we're trying to utilize community partnerships to do some unique things that maybe we wouldn't be able to do with our own money. So I think it's strong, and we're going to continue to grow that.
The data and privacy piece of the framework is really pretty straightforward in terms of just teaching and promoting that students understand data privacy, the importance of it, how to ensure that they have it. So we are always trying to model and advocate for best practices with that, whether we're working with students on digital citizenship type lessons or partnering with our teachers as well. And then in future areas for growth under that, it's just really ensuring that our library staff, all of our assistants are also aware of student privacy rights, and also making sure that we are helping students ensure that they're doing the right things to make sure that their information and data is kept private as well.
The next piece is collaborative leadership, which is actually pretty simple. It's really just us keeping in line with what the community and what the board and what the district wants. Ultimately, that's our goal, is to be supportive of you and be supportive of every stakeholder in the district. And so what this really speaks to is the fact that, yes, we understand that that's our number one focus, is that we want to be sure that we're all working together, that we're all on the same page, that we all want the same things, and that if there's issues that come up, that we can communicate with each other and we can solve those problems together. And I think we've had a good relationship, in all the years I've been here, and so I think we'll just continue to work through this and keep it going.
Home stretch. Time and space. This is where, honestly, I come to work. I feel so fortunate and so blessed. I know where I started in Kennedy Middle School in 2008 and what the library facility looked like, and I kind of am still in awe of what I walk into every day. terms of space, we're very fortunate, and I know that our teachers appreciate that, I know our students do as well, and so we feel really good about our space. Not that there isn't always opportunities for improvement, because we do see the way that our spaces are used, and those opportunities change and those demands change, so we're going to need to change with that. As far as areas for growth there, really, it's the time piece of it. Later on today, I know on your agenda, you're talking about Kennedy Middle School's proposed schedule change. And so just making sure that our students, our teachers, all have as much opportunity and really are using those spaces and the resources as effectively as we hope they will, and helping them grow that way. So that would be our area of growth. It's just making sure we create opportunities in our schedule time for students and teachers.
And then finally, we have learning-centered literacy, which really aims to take a look at making sure that our collections and the materials that we provide represent everyone in the district equally, and to be sure that we do those within the framework that we set forth within the board policy, and to make sure that we're providing everybody with appropriate materials and things for different needs. It could be books, it could be audiobooks, it could be magazines, it could be DVDs, all the sorts of things that we have, the databases. But when it comes down to it, we just want to make sure that everybody is represented. And that is one of our goals as we always work for in the future. Creating staff and student awareness of what we offer is always something that's on the agenda for us. I mean, we're always looking for new ways to try to get through to people what exactly we're doing. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but we try. Whether it's Google Classrooms or whether trying to put out things in newsletters. I mean, it's not for a lack of trying that we don't get through to people sometimes, but the goal for the future is to keep going and to keep trying, and that's part of it. So that is our, in a nutshell, plan. And so if you have any questions.
So it talks about a 3-year cycle for changing out books. How do we determine which books we keep, which ones we get rid of? Where do those go once we eliminate books out of the library?
It's not really a 3-year cycle for updating collections. The 3-year cycle is this plan until it's kind of rejuvenated and really republished, I guess,
Okay.
if you want to say that. As far as collection development within our libraries, it's always ongoing. And so, looking at board policy, which it states, in terms of weeding and updating collections based on need, or weeding based on something that's not relevant, something that's not dated, something that's not being used. That's constant and ongoing in our libraries. And so we always are looking for recommendations from teachers, from students, and of course with, we'll talk more about Common School funding and our digital library, different opportunities to expand and enrich our collections as well.
Tracy?
They covered them.
Okay. Just a couple of things as I'm looking through what you presented, which always adds more context to just reading what was given to us. I see, obviously, we have this framework provided by DPI, and it seems like we've attached some goals to that, right, as part of this 3-year framework, as well as some things that already probably align within that framework that we're doing, which is good. There's a lot of good things in here. But when I think of a 3-year plan, there's a place we're at now and a place we want to be. And the part I miss in this is the map to get there and some waypoints of goals that we can measure against to make sure we're on path and staying there. So if I could just add that as a suggestion, and this is just a report. Yeah, a timeline, sure, but goals and maybe a pathway as far as what that really looks like. What do some of these things look like in operation? And when you know that you've met those, and tangibly so, right? How we can promote that and help promote that for you, so. I think that was just the only piece that I'm kind of missing on it. But I appreciate it. There's a lot of good information in here and a lot of things that I think a lot of people don't understand. School libraries are more than books in a room, right? And you talked about a lot of that, right? All the supportive apparatuses you use to help with the teachers and the technology you can bring in. There's so much more than what they used to be. So we can, I think with this, we can highlight a lot of that and really bring some of that to the forefront. But other than that, really interesting stuff, so thank you.
Now the second.
Yeah, so we'll, if nobody else has anything, I'll move on to B. That'll be the reading pilot, right? Or no? Oh, sorry. I thought that was gonna be the next. Yeah, sorry. You have a two-part presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This SORA proposal came about really as, when you talk about creating sort of like that three-year plan, this is like a first step in this three-year plan. So, this is kind of the start of it. And SORA is our online library per se, the service that hosts our collection. We got into it with the high school and middle school years ago and put audiobooks and ebooks on there, and we really never did much for the elementary school. And we talked about it sort of year after year, and we had an elementary school librarian during that time, and she really wasn't into doing it through SORA. She wanted to get most of her books through Follett, but it was kind of a mess. They were doing, kind of like these playaways, and no one was sure really what direction we were going to go with ebook and audiobook. And Aaron and I have sort of been kicking around this idea for a few years, and finally we had the money available to finally say, I think it's time that we make a commitment to getting a ebook, audiobook library for our kids at the elementary school. So one of the first things we did when working with SORA is they really offer two pathways that you can go. One is that you sort of join a consortium of schools in Wisconsin and basically pay a fee and then get their service, and that becomes our collection as a shared collection. The other one is really to build our own collection. And we really weighed a lot on both, and positives and negatives of both. But the direction that we went through, even though it was probably more expensive, was really to have our own choice. And we thought that really that was the direction the district would want to go. To choose our own material would allow us sort of greater oversight over the material that's coming in and how it's cataloged and how it's going out and things like that. So what we present tonight really is sort of like that version of creating our own library essentially for the elementary school kids from scratch, which we already have at KMS, and that's how we've done it there. So we skipped sort of joining the consortium in lieu of sort of doing some extra work and allowing us to pick our own stuff, essentially is what it is. So if you take a look at, the background of it, basically, we only have 151 digital ebooks available for elementary kids, all right, which is probably insufficient in our eyes, to say the least. At the high school, we have checked out over 2,000 digital checkouts this year as far as ebooks and audiobooks and magazines. So it does get a lot of use at the high school and the middle school. And so I guess we wanted to use the same service to align it. And I know that some of the questions are, well, access. And one of the things we wanted to make sure of is that the high school kids and the middle school kids and the elementary school kids are all accessing different material appropriate to their age group. And so we've worked very hard with SORA to come up with sort of safeguards and to make sure that these collections are separate and make sure nobody's getting into the wrong areas where they shouldn't be. And also SORA as a company themselves are working very hard to make sure that everything is, that they are doing a good job of doing their labeling and keeping people out of where they shouldn't be as well. As far as the benefits of having a digital library, we've seen a lot of use at the high school as far in different things, as far as reading incentives, interactive reading tools, anytime, anywhere access. And I think COVID really changed this for us. And, maybe before COVID, we weren't so sold on rushing into a digital library. But I think post-COVID, we said, I think we need to move. That's the way things are going. If something would ever happen again, this gives kids access all the time to material that they can use. And so I think that was part of the reasoning in bringing it to you now. It does get a lot of really good use. I mean, I find at the high school, a lot of special ed population will use it because it helps them read along with it. It helps them listen as they are reading with it, and I can get that stuff a lot sooner. If I order it through books, it often takes months to come in. This, a teacher can come in, and the next day I can have it ready for them. And that's been really helpful, too. So it's test prep books. I mean, there's a lot of different things at the high school and the middle school that we can get. And so those are some of the benefits that it would bring.
So just to clarify too, the 2,000, over 2,000 checkouts, that's a KMS and GHS combined circulating statistic that I pulled. But if you look at our elementary usage with the ebooks that we have currently in our catalog, which again, we don't have many to start with, we're looking at 28 digital checkouts this year in total, which is very small. And I wrestled with this, as Jeff said, for a while because, well, at the middle school and high school, we know all of our students are one-to-one. They have the devices, they have the access. We know that's not the case at the elementary level for all of our students, nor probably should it, which is why we haven't gone in that direction. That said, it's really that outside of school piece for me that whether it's weekends, summer, it does provide a positive outlet for students to get some positive screen time when school's not in session. I'm looking at summer as really one of the bigger benefits as well to keep kids reading. There are reading programs that we can basically create some summer reading programs. Our schools aren't open, allows kids to benefit and grow through that as well. Also, I work with fifth graders regularly throughout the school year, and for the longest time, I always get asked, you really have print books in your libraries yet? Don't all kids, they just want digital, right? That's all they want. Not necessarily. I would say on my surveys of fifth graders, they will still tell you 70% of them would prefer the print. I'm the same way. This is a supplementary library. This is no way targeting to take over or to replace what we're doing in print. It's going to be small, but it's going to be a supplement to what we offer our students. At least that's what we envision. As far as the collection development, as Jeff said, this is curated 100% by us, not by a consortium, not selected for us. Even if the consortia, which they did allow us to filter and block materials for the two of us to manage all of that content that comes in by the thousands as they purchase it, we can't honestly say we can monitor that. It's not feasible for us. So we would rather be able to manage it ourselves. The initial core collection that we're proposing, and we worked with Sora and Overdrive, is 1,400 titles. That would equal about one title per student at this point. And we broke down the lists for that so we can see the title list. Jeff and I have reviewed that, and that really follows our selection plan of recommendations based on what we're already seeing as popular as print materials in our library, high interest topics and titles, and also those that align to our curriculum and also support our curriculum. The investment that we're looking at and proposing would be funded solely by those common school funds, which this year is at an all-time high for us, so we think it's a great opportunity. As a district, we have $312,000, or just over $312,000 that is provided through that trust fund for libraries. This would represent less than 10% of that budget at this point, this initial investment. It would come to just around $30,000 for a start in it. There's no additional fees or membership charges, and we would have sole control over the weeding and growth of that library as we would move forward. So that is kind of an overview of how we would like to create the equity from K to 12 in the digital realm of ebooks and audiobooks, and just provide, again, a supplement to what we offer in our libraries for our students at the elementary level.
So I do like you hit on a lot of things that are important to us as a board, as far as us being able to, develop our own library instead of just, accepting what's already there. Also, keeping it age appropriate instead of, again, access to the whole thing. That's obviously really important to the district. And then my one question is, so the anytime, anywhere access, which is obviously really important, are we able to track that then through the summer to see how often it is used? And
No different than our catalog and physical checkouts in our library. We can access student accounts. We can get summaries of what's checked out. We can get statistics on what has circulated through those libraries and provide those through reports as well.
do we have that now as far as how much our, because right now we have this for our KMS and middle school and high
Right,
school?
and that's where those,
Right, and so
basic
that's throughout how
circulation
much is it being
statistics
used in
come
the
from.
summertime? Have you noticed, like vacations and?
that's a good question. Now, I wouldn't say I've broken that down for KMS and GHS, but that would be something that we could look at as
It would just be
well.
interesting to know if our students are actually accessing it over the summer.
You're right.
And I see, I mean, it was a long time ago when my kids were little, but, I mean, going to the library in the summer and the summer library programs, I mean, they've only like bloomed and blossomed and all these, the parents getting the kids reading during the summer, I mean, all the programs that are available, I think this will just be a great supplement to that. The excitement in the library, bringing your kids there, having them pick out books, I mean, it's a really good time to get those reading skills. It's a really good time to reinforce those reading skills, and I think this will be a really good opportunity for them to, in addition to the print books that they may get at the community library, is to have access to even greater things. So they find something they really like at the community library, maybe they can look up on our catalog and see if we have something else by the same author or the same type of book. So that's what I hope, at least, for the summer.
No, I agree, it's invaluable to have, your parents be able to go, well, let's go find a book online, no matter where you're at, on a plane, on the beach, you can kind of look something up and go over it with the kids, keep them reading.
My question was about the safeguards between different levels, so they addressed that one.
Yeah, my comments on it would be, you put together a really good presentation on it, kind of start to finish. Similar to what I was mentioning before, having that roadmap and the dots, this one really kind of starts connecting some of that for us, and highlighting an area within our schools that we didn't have this. So I think this is a great approach to it. Specifically curating it to our needs, working with teaching and learning, finding out what we're bringing in new curriculum. So we don't necessarily know what we don't know yet as far as gaps that may exist there. This could be a very efficient way for us to fill those as they come through, as we learn and build out the rest of that in totality. So I think this is going to dovetail really nicely with a lot of the projects we have going on in the district right now. It's a good step for sure to go in this direction. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time you took.
You're welcome.
Obviously,
you're
you
welcome.
spent a lot of time on all of this, so.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks. All right.
Item B, reading pilot update number 6.
All right.
Did that come out?
What was that?
It's like a Star Wars saga.
We're almost there. So this is the 6th update, and there's 2 big pieces that I'd like to include with this update. First, I included some reading pilot data for you for how our 3 pilots performed with our students. And then the other piece is some information from the state of Wisconsin. On February 19th, the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction submitted a memo to the Wisconsin Joint Finance Committee, and it recommended 11 early literacy instructional materials to be approved for the Wisconsin's recommended resource list. So we had been waiting for the Early Literacy Curriculum Council, which was identified in Act 20 to identify resources. DPI also had the same power that the ELCC, or the Early Literacy Curriculum Council, had in recommending materials to the Joint Finance Committee. So the way that I understand it is DPI was monitoring the process that the Early Literacy Curriculum Council was using, and DPI felt that there were elements of Act 20 that were missing from the ELCC's process. So the DPI looked at it and looked at each one of the criteria that Act 20 outlines and identified curriculum that met all of those criteria. So now we wait for the Joint Finance Committee to make their decision on whether or not they're going to approve all 11 of the items that, or resources that DPI recommended, or the 4 resources that the ELCC recommended. There were 3 resources that overlapped on both of their lists. None of the ones that we looked at overlapped on both of the lists. And then there was one that appeared on the ELCC's list that did not appear on the DPI's list. So Wonders and HMH both are on the Wisconsin DPI's recommended list. Super Kids did not make the recommended list from DPI. It missed one criteria. So they shared a table of resources in the memo that's in the background. If you look at that, there's a table. There's one area where they said Super Kids did not meet the Act 20 criteria, and it was in oral language development. Super Kids is actively working with the Joint Finance Committee and submitted supplemental material for them to consider to show how they do meet oral language development within their resource as well. So as of right now, as it stands, there are 2 of our resources that are being recommended to the Joint Finance Committee for approval. Before I dive into the data that I shared around our reading pilot, are there any questions regarding the update from the state?
Jake, what was the original date that this was supposed to be decided?
December 1st. So Act 20 identified December 1st as the date that there would be the recommendations to the Joint Finance Committee so that districts would be able to move forward in making determinations for what resources they'd use next year. Going forward, I'm assuming this process is going to work a little bit faster if they decide that they're going to add to this list.
Can you speak to some of the process that the Learning Committee, or the Learning Committee used versus what DPI used in rating the materials?
Yep. So the Early Literacy Curriculum Council, what they did was they used a rubric to assign scores to all of the areas that were identified by Act 20. So they weren't recognizing whether or not the resource, for example, focused on phonics. So what DPI did was, does the resource meet the requirements of teaching phonics in a way that is aligned with the science of reading? If so, DPI said, yes, it meets that criteria. The Early Literacy Curriculum Council gave it scores. So of the raters, depending on the resource, they said at least 7 people need to submit scores. So the committee of 9, they made sure that there was at least 7 scores, and then what they did was they took an average of all those scores. So for both HMH and Wonders, I have their rubrics that I can share with you if you'd like to see it. There were areas where a reviewer or multiple reviewers, 7 out of 8, may have said this resource meets criteria, and they gave it a 3. If one member of that committee said that they thought it was a 2, that it mostly met it but didn't quite do it sufficiently, that pretty much knocked the resource out of being on the Early Literacy Curriculum Council's approved list, because you had to have an average of 3 across the board. So if you look at their rubrics for both HMH and for Wonders, you'll see that there's a lot of 3s, there are some 4s for most of the reviewers, and then there's a couple 2s that popped up, and because of that, their overall score for both of those resources were right around 2.8, so there were a few scores that fell below the 3 mark. So what the ELCC was doing was rating to the degree to which they thought that the resource was doing it, how well they were doing it. What DPI did was not necessarily measure how well they thought they did it, but whether or not the resource met the criteria of Act 20? Does it teach phonics in a way that is aligned with the science of reading? Does it make sure that it's outlawing 3Qing, like there's no evidence of 3Qing in the instruction that's provided to students through the resource? So the 9 independent reviewers gave them a score on how well they did it. The second piece of that is there was some struggle amongst the committee to create inter-rater reliability in that they never scored the resources together, and the committee mostly had access to digital resources versus the print. So because of that, if you listen to some of the discussions that they have, and all of them are public on Wisconsin Reads, you can look at the actual recordings of their discussions. You'll hear that in some of the reviewers that they said, well, once I started scoring, I then realized I needed to go back, but I couldn't change some of the scores that I had given to curriculums. Or there was debate in what people thought constituted a 3 versus a 4 versus a 2, and that happened after they scored versus beforehand. And often when you're trying to create inter-rater reliability, what you'd want to do is have that discussion on the outset to say, what are we looking for that constitutes it meeting criteria? So even without them going through that process, the majority of the scores that they received from the ELCC said it was a 3. There were just a couple of people who rated it a 2 in one or more areas, and that's kind of what knocked it off of being it on that list. DPI really looked at, does it meet the intent of what Act 20 is? DPI's rationale for why they did it that way was they considered all of the school districts in the state of Wisconsin, where everybody is at in terms of their understanding of reading and their ability to implement these programs. And what they said was making sure that we go through this approach offers Wisconsin districts more local control over what they decide for their resources and what resources best meet students' needs. In addition to that, they will share what I have shared many times with this committee is it's not necessarily the resource that's going to move you over to making sure that all of our students are proficient readers. You can't just give them Wonders or HMH and then all of a sudden expect that our reading scores are going to pop up to, astronomical levels. It's really the back end work that teachers are going to do to understand what are the best approaches to teaching reading, what are the ways in which they're using that resource with students, because that's really where it's, the rubber hits the road, and that resource is either going to be effective with students or it's not. It's the professional development that we do. It's the outline that we provide in our curriculum plans to make sure that we're focusing on the things that students need.
That's why we have Jake, by the way. No, thank you for that in-depth discussion. I know we had touched on that in a private conversation. I think it's important for people to understand there were some rating issues around concept and design and process. And that's why we have these 2 lists now and what's going to happen and why this is drug out a little bit. My understanding is the stuff we do have ultimately rated well in both, and in some of it, it was that one outlier 2 that pulled it off that list. And I think as we move forward with a decision that we're going to have to make, I think we can articulate a discussion around 1 out of 7, but 7 agree or 6 agree,
Yep.
right? Like we can move forward with a pretty good
And
foundation there.
And I will preface this, when you think about what the Early Literacy Curriculum Council was tasked with, we took a year to look at priorities, identify what we were looking for in the resource, months of looking at resources to narrow it to 3, and then we spent another 4 months, now more, using it in classrooms with students. And they did not have curriculums in their hands until November, and they were supposed to produce this list at a high level, or a high rate, so they had to go through lots and lots of curriculum, so it was a challenging task on their part. So it's not for lack of trying, it's just they had a lot to look at in a very short period of time, which it could impact how well they were able to spend with any one of the resources. And they were doing it through primarily an online platform, which our teachers will tell you it's a lot harder to do that versus having the physical resources in your hands to kind of page through and see what's there. But yeah, I think both the ELCC, ultimately, they were, of the curriculums that they rated, Wonders and HMH were 3 and 4, or no, actually, I'll take that back, because they rated a couple extras. They would have been the 5th and 6th curriculums on their list, so they were the ones that just barely missed the cut. There's also another independent group that we had referenced when we were initially looking at these. Ed Reports rates all of the curriculums now on their alignment to the science of reading, and both HMH and Wonders score very high on the science of reading alignment that Ed Reports provides, equal to what you'll see from what's on the list that the ELCC produced. So CKLA is one of the resources that made it onto the ELCC's list, and its rating of its alignment to the science of reading is equally as high as what you'll see for Wonders and HMH.
To your point, I mean, obviously the curriculum is extremely important, but the thing about that is the teacher's ability to use it, the teacher's, belief in its use, and then ultimately the consistency that we're trying to build with using the same instead of having each class learn something else. So it's interesting to just keep moving forward and see where we wind up. But again, it's the teacher's commitment and their dedication to teaching the kids, and the curriculum is what's going to ultimately be the success of our students.
Excuse me, as far as some of the data that you provided, is there anything you want to draw our eye to?
Yeah, so I'll kind of explain what's in both of those tables. So
Sorry. And the other reason why I'm kind of cutting it, it's 6:17.
Yep, I'll start cooking here.
Yeah, sorry.
The kindergarten has to be looked at a little bit differently than the other levels. The reason being is we don't have a pre-post test for them. So really what I broke it out into is how many students scored in the high achievement level there. That's making an enormous assumption that all of our students came in as an equalized sample. So the kindergarten data is a little bit harder to look at, but you can see how well each one of our curriculums performed there. In the observed growth category, MAP will tell you the fall score to winter, how much they grew. One of the things that I'd like to point out is this is a very short time for reading development. So the data that we see here is very positive in terms of the fact that we're seeing growth that's beyond what we expected from our non-pilot classrooms. So our non-pilot classrooms were really used as a control to see if you're not under one of these curriculums, how well did you perform? And you can see at the 1-2 level, all of the pilot classrooms on average outperformed our non-pilot, and you can see that Super Kids and Wonders were pretty equal in terms of the amount of growth that they supported in students. And then at the 3-5 level, you'll notice that Wonders outperformed HMH in terms of its average growth. For MET growth projections, that's the second table. That's another way to look at this where you can sort of balance out our students who may have pulled those averages. So one of the complications of just looking at an average is you can have outliers that pull the data one way or the other. I tried to limit that in the analysis so that we didn't have one kid who made 40 points of growth because their pretest was messed up. That skewed our data. So I looked at all of it, made sure that there wasn't an outlier that was pulling our data one way or the other. But when we look at the growth projections, what that is, it's just students who met what MAP said they should grow in that period of time. So from fall to winter, how many students made what we MAP determines as appropriate growth? And you can see there again, at the 1-2 level, our pilot classrooms outperformed our non-pilot rooms, and Wonders and Super Kids were very similar in terms of their performance. Likewise with 3-5, Wonders outperformed HMH.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see some of that, even though it's just a pilot format, it's not in fully integrated curriculum. So to see some of this growth in that regard shows a lot, right?
And these are brand new Wonders users. So every time we met with one of the trainers, you'd hear one of our teachers say, oh, I didn't know that was in there, or I didn't realize you could do that. So they were learning new elements of
Yeah.
these systems while they were doing it. So these are brand new users to it, and sometimes with resources you see an implementation dip where they're learning how to use it and they're not using it to its full capability, and then you start to see the growth afterwards. Here we're seeing it pretty quickly that
As they grow into super users of this, I would think exponentially we can see.
and these,
Once again, short window we're looking at, but it's a very encouraging.
yep.
Mr. Barner?
Looking at the results, I think it's outstanding, some of the growth that we're seeing here. I think you've mentioned in the past, but can you spend maybe 30 seconds on your thoughts of, would it make sense to have one program for K through 2 and then a different program 3 through 5? Or is consistency more important and you'd want to have one curriculum across elementary?
Yeah, what I would need to see in the data to get me to the spot where I'd say 2 different programs are what would be more beneficial is that if there was some kind of extremes. For example, Super Kids outperformed everybody else by a large margin, that it would be hard to go away from anything other than Super Kids. Super Kids was very similar to Wonders in terms of its performance. The big benefit to consistency is, one, the training piece, that all teachers are getting similar training and there's vertical alignment. They can have conversations across grade levels in terms of the progressions that are expected. But another huge element of this is we have teachers on a regular basis who have to move grade levels. So in addition to everything else that they need to learn to switch grade levels, they'd be learning a new curriculum and a new system to move from 3rd grade to 2nd grade, which makes that that's additional stress, that's additional hardship that we would be putting on our teachers, that unless there was compelling data to suggest that this one was what was best for students over and above what we were already trying, that would be the thing that would push me to the direction to say, yep, let's use 2, because it really does meet our earliest readers better than the other ones.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Item C, KMS schedule update number 2.
All right, so Jessica Gearin, the middle school principal, and I have been working with a team. This is what I included here as a proposed schedule for you. In the schedule, you'll see on the top that there's the original Kennedy Bell schedule, and then kind of where we've landed in terms of what we would propose in terms of a new Bell schedule. So the time that had been a part of the SAS and IDR has been condensed, and it's now at the end of the day as opposed to the middle of the day, forming an advisory period. Within the schedule, you'll notice that there are these 45-minute blocks of time. The reason it's like that is because, let's just look at the 6th grade schedule. 2 of those 45-minute blocks would be combined to form your math class. So period 1 and period 2 could be math. Period 3 and period 4 could be literacy. And then period 5 could be science, 6 could be social studies. So within this schedule, what would eventually happen is for students, they would have those blocks of time put together to form the academic blocks that you see in the original schedule. The reason why it's not identified just yet is we're still working with the scheduling team to identify the best possible options for our coordinated arts classes. Part of that is space utilization and making sure that it's really coming down to gym usage to make sure that we have spaces for all of our students. So it gives you the framework for what the new schedule would look like, where we have math and literacy for 90 minutes, and then we would have science and social studies for 45, as well as the coordinated arts classes would be 45. That would be an increase of 5 minutes for coordinated arts and science and social studies, which was one of the big themes that Jess had heard when she had met with her staff, that she was looking to expand those blocks.
See, it appears that it builds out window of time at the end of the day? Is that kind of a catch-all? Run and meet with staff if you have questions. I guess, what do you envision that being?
Yep, so advisory becomes an opportunity for several things. Right now, the staff at Kennedy feels that the SAS part of the day is beneficial to students because it allows students to see teachers for additional support. There are also, this committee has talked about it, some additional programming that we have to do with students, often through our guidance program to meet particular needs or things that are mandated to us by the state of Wisconsin. That bit of time at the end of the day could be an opportunity where we could use that so that we don't impact core instruction or pull kids out of advisory. So it can be used for a number of things, so that additional programming plus an opportunity for students to meet with teachers, finish projects, work on homework at the end of the day.
Any questions? Tom?
I see there was 2 minutes added, ending at 2:45 instead of 2:43. Is that going to have a cascade effect on busing?
I think that adjustment there at 2:45, one, I don't think it does impact, but two, we're still working on adjusting the passing times a little bit because there's discussion around that. I would say the big core to this proposed schedule would be that 45-minute and 90-minute block times. The adjustments that you'll see between now and the next time that I bring the schedule to you will be that the cleaned up piece, so that one, you can see where those academic blocks actually fall, but two, there's some slight adjustments to the passing times that the team is still working out. 3 minutes, in their opinion, is a tough amount of time for some of our students to transition between classes, and then at other times it seems like more than enough for middle schoolers to be in the hallway. So it's the adjustments that we're making to those little pieces of the schedule at this point. The big rocks that we've tried to work through are identifying the core instructional blocks of being for math and literacy at 90, the science and social studies pieces being at 45, and then coordinated arts at 45. There won't be, this schedule we wouldn't make adjustments to this that would then have ramifications for busing or any of our other supporting services.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 6, unfinished business. We have none. Item 7, we're going to have 3 A, B, and C here. We'll start with A, education for employment plan approval.
All right. Again, tonight I have Ms. Alex Fisher with us to present the Education for Employment Plan. There are 2 big pieces that she's bringing to you in addition to the Education for Employment Plan. Our goal here is to bring the E4E, or Education for Employment Plan, to the full board with a positive recommendation tonight. But Alex would like to share with you both the portrait of the graduate that would be for external use that she had discussed last time, and then what it would look like for internal use.
Hello, thank you for having me again. As Jake mentioned, the E4E plan is within your board agenda. That is roughly the exact same as what it was as when I presented last time. The newest additions are the completed portrait of a graduate and readiness scorecard, both the external and internal documents. Thank you to our Director of Communication, Mandy Race, for creating these beautiful things, because I certainly couldn't. So this first one that's open is our external document. The purpose of this will be to communicate our mission and our vision around academic and career planning for our families as well as our students. There's a little blurb there about what the portrait of a graduate is, which is it's essentially the aspirations or values we want to instill in all of our students. And then our academic and career planning programming outlined in our E4E plan is the action steps we plan to use to support that, whereas the scorecard is the metrics we're using to measure our success. So the portrait of a graduate is this document that says Warhawks are soaring towards college and career college career and life readiness. This is exactly the same as the last time I presented, only one statement was changed, and that's the A in the acronym. This was originally achieves, now I can't remember the original, but it was achieves their individuality or something along those lines, but we changed it to attains employability skills because we felt that original line overlapped with immerses in self-reflection, and we really wanted to hit on those employability skills as that's a foundation of academic and career planning. As you continue through the document, we identified indicators based off of state and national recommendations around college career and life readiness. So we broke it down in those categories and listed the indicators so that families can consider what are some items they should be examining to prepare their students for life after high school. Within the document, Mandy has included some of our own Germantown students and some snapshots, but we hope to only include Germantown students as we progress here. And that is primarily the external document, so if you want to transition to the internal.
I will have to find
It's on that same presentation.
this one.
Go to the last, slide 5. And then item 3, yep, it's linked there. So the internal document is primarily going to be used by our administrative team and staff. It's the exact same, but when we get to those indicators, you'll notice it says meeting 3 of these indicators we would consider a student to be college ready. So putting more defined metrics on that, and continuing to the next page, we would start to measure that data. Again, this data is not accurate. They're just placeholder numbers right now because we wanted to get the document and data metrics approved first, as well as we're working to track this information in our student information system of Skyward. So there's some logistical pieces to navigate there. But we would then use the data that we collect every year in this scorecard to evaluate our academic and career planning programming, so that way we can make updates to our E4E plan. So while I'm asking for approval of the E4E plan today, please know that that is a continuously changing document because we are always striving to grow our programming for students. Are there any questions on the E4E plan, the portrait of a graduate, or the readiness scorecard?
Doesn't look like it.
No, I'm
You did a
looking
good
forward
job
to seeing it
preparing
in
this with the
use.
last
Yeah.
one, so.
Right, yeah.
Thank you. Easy enough?
Any discussion, further discussion?
Are you looking for a motion?
If there's not, yes, I would be.
Make a motion to move forward with the positive recommendation to the full board to approve the Education for Employment Plan, Portrait of a Graduate, and Readiness Scorecard.
Second?
Ms. Higginbotham with the motion for positive recommendation, Mr. Polk with the second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that passes. B, summer school offerings and proposed budget.
All right, so it's starting to feel warm outside, so we can start thinking about summer. And tonight I bring to you the summer school offerings that we are proposing for this year's summer school. So there are new course proposals this year. Julia Leeson and I worked together with our teachers to seek their input on expanding our summer school program to see if there were any additional courses that they'd like to offer. One of the areas of need that we were looking at this year was expanding offerings for our 4K students. So you'll notice in the 4 options that we're providing, there are 2 more that expand the opportunities for our 4K kids because that's one area where our summer school programming is currently lacking in terms of what we have or could offer for them. So we wanted to make sure that there were offerings for them as well. So the 4 new course proposals that we have for this summer school session. The first one would be the American Sign Language Club, and this one would be open to grade levels 1 through 5. The second course offering that we're looking at is called Nature Art Exploration. So this is an opportunity for our students to fuse both an experience with art with being out in nature during the summer. And there are two additional courses that we're looking at for kind of expanding literacy options. So the first one is Stories in Art. So in this class, what students will do is they're going to be looking at specific stories, but then they're going to pair that with an art experience that goes along with it. And finally, the last course that we're proposing is Story Stretchers. And with Story Stretchers, what they're looking at there is familiar stories, but then what they want to do is link that to something additional. So that would include activities, music, movement, or some sort of play acting. In addition to that, you'll notice that for our summer school offerings, we're offering many of the same classes that we offered last year. There have been a couple of reductions to our offerings. Part of it has to do with space or our ability to find an instructor to effectively teach the course. In addition to that, similarly, at this point in the year, I bring to you the dates for summer school. The one significant change here is we're offering 2 sessions this year versus 3 sessions. We used to offer a 1-week session in between the start of summer school and the end of school, so it was that very first week out of school. One of the reasons why we reduced that is because of the courses that we offered during that time and the interest of instructors. It was really a set of classes that were very specialized, one of them being fishing. We offered another round of archery during that time. So the classes that we had generally used during that time, either A, we didn't have the legacy instructors that did that and didn't have anybody who was interested in continuing to teach that class. But then in addition to that, what we found was there was an impact on our main session enrollment because of that. So it was harder to create schedules for students because they had taken one of those 1-week offerings that was impacting them later on in those other 2 sessions. So we looked at this as in terms of an efficiency for both staffing and making sure that we have classes. The biggest reason there is we frequently have to cut classes because we don't have enrollment, and this is a way for us to more or less condense enrollment into those 2 sessions to make sure that we can run more classes for our kids. The last piece of it that I'll go through is that there's an estimated budget, so this is similar to last year. The estimated salary and benefit is nearly identical to what it was last year that we were proposing. In addition to that, the material total that we have budgeted for all the supplies for summer school is very similar to what it was last year. At the end of the summer school term, like I did last year, I'll bring back that full report that includes an estimated state revenue that we bring in. Similar to last year, the estimated state revenue that we bring in exceeds what our proposed budget is.
Any questions? Mr. Lowell?
I'm just wondering if you can tell us anything about engineering adventures, what might be covered?
Engineering and adventure.
Just curious.
Are you interested in teaching the class?
I would, but I'm working.
I'm going to do my best to do this from memory because these aren't established curricular areas that I get to see throughout the school year. If I remember correctly, Engineering and Adventures, they do several small projects very similar to what you would see kind of in an elementary type engineering scenario where they'll make things like Rube Goldberg type devices or marble runs where they're trying to link together several pieces to complete an action.
Okay.
If you'd like, I know where the box is. I can haul out the materials for you so that I can send you some additional details on the what's actually done in the class.
That'd be nice if you could. Don't spend a lot of time on it, but I'm just curious. The other one, maybe, Lego robotics. I'm wondering if any of this, you know, this sounds so interesting. I'm wondering if any of it could be videoed and maybe put on our website. You know, I think it might bring interest to tech ed in general, you know, for some of these things, and including what you were just talking about now, the Rube Goldberg projects can be very elaborate and very interesting.
Absolutely, I mean, that is a wonderful way for us to promote our program, is to provide both pictures and videos of what our kids are doing during the summer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm excited about the ASL club. I think that's a great idea, just because there are shortages of interpreters, and to get kids kind of interested early, and that builds throughout. It's invaluable. So I'm excited about that one. Hopefully, we get a lot of interest in it through the kids.
Yeah, it's nice to see an expansion, some new additions to the roster, so to speak. So, are we looking for a motion out of this? Am I missing it?
Motion to move forward with the positive recommendation to the full board to approve the summer school courses and proposed budget for 2024 as presented.
Second.
Seeing Bentham with the motion, Mr. Pollack with the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes. C, item C, Discovery Education K-5 resource.
All right, so this would be a resource that we are looking to purchase through Common School Library Aid. We already have a partnership with Discovery Education as a 6-12 resource, so we're using it both at Kennedy and at GHS. What we're looking to do is expand it to our elementaries. So earlier this year, we extended a pilot opportunity to our teachers to allow them access to see what the Discovery Education platform offered. There were several resources that they no longer had access to. And so this was to both fill that void that was left for what they were saying they were using those resources for, so extensions primarily for social studies and science, but then to provide their students another way to experience concepts. So Discovery Education provides video segments, so they don't have to watch the full video. They can get the one particular piece of the video that they're looking for. There's images to help support the understanding of concepts, and then in addition to that, Discovery also has reading passages that are accessible for teachers, so that they have some curated resources that can supplement the standards that they're trying to teach in their classrooms. The quote that's provided in here, it's $4,000 to extend that for a year for each one of the elementary buildings. So it's $4,000 apiece for each one of those buildings, for a grand total of $16,000 from Common School Library Aid.
Any questions?
I think, I'm just looking at the email you sent to us previous, confirming that there are content controls as far as filtering information if we find the need to. And also, there's one other thing here. So do we use a lot of the controls right now with the material that?
We currently don't. So Discovery Education was one of the resources that I inherited, and I don't know that we've looked to use it in that way. Once we looked at exploring it at the K-5 level, given that there are some, it really this spawns from the conversations that we had earlier this year. I worked with Discovery Education to ask them what are the additional content controls that we have, and they have one of the more robust systems that I've seen so far in terms of their ability for us to determine what content we're going to host through Discovery Education. So if there was a resource that we didn't want within the pool of resources that we were providing to our students, we can eliminate that on our end, and it doesn't pop up on anybody's search. So once we've determined we want to remove it, we can. So we can do that by keyword, we can do that by theme. If it was the case, it's not with this, but at the 6-12 level, what we could do is we could determine what materials would be available 6-8 versus 9-12. So that platform gives us the ability to moderate our content to make sure that it's accessible to the students that we want it to be accessible to.
This isn't replacing anything, it's gonna be in addition to.
This is in addition to, we did take some things out of the common school funds that our librarians, when they developed the budget for the year and thinking about what are the resources that we're going to provide. We did remove 2 resources that were kind of on the video content side of things. So it was providing students access to concepts through video clips and things like that. So 2 of those resources had been removed. So this, even though it's not to replace, this is in addition to kind of supplement a need that we had heard from our teachers. And really, the 2 areas where this could be used as a supplemental, although it does have resources for both reading and math, it's the science, social studies at this point in time that our teachers have communicated to me that they were looking for another way for students to experience a concept to develop a better understanding.
I think it's important to note, we were provided access to this program ahead of time. Jake and I talked on the controls side. I had a lot of those kind of questions, and it seems this is one of the I don't want to say easy, more robust abilities to set controls internally, section populations of age appropriateness, or however they determine to do it. The thing I really appreciated is discovery, right? So we had a high quality production content to it, which I think leads, anecdotally, I guess probably would lead to a little more engaged learning than some of the other resources we've seen in the past, where it was a little more hokey on the production side, which I think is valuable, adds value. I know there's been discussions in regards to this type of supplementary material, not only on this board and in this committee, but in the community, about potentially these types of things being removed and taken away. I'd like to add, some of that stuff was removed because the cost versus use wasn't aligning, and the goal for this is to cover a broader range of use at a reasonable cost as well, while maintaining that budget. So I'm excited for this to come in. Discovery is obviously a well-known entity in the world. I think we've all viewed or used it in some form, in some fashion at some point, right? So I think we can come in some good common ground with that. So thank you for continuing to look and bringing another item forward that I think we can really bring into the district for good use. Mr. Barney?
Assuming it gets approved, is your plan to still implement it later this year?
Yeah, our Discovery contract actually pops up in April, so there's an alignment between what we're doing at the high school and then what we would do at the elementary school. So as soon as we start it, teachers would have access to it, and then it will continue for a full year. Again, it would be a resource that's available through the library.
We're looking, oh, sorry. Did you have a hand?
No, sorry. No, good.
We're looking for this to go to the full board or to finance, given the purchase
So
price?
the way that we've done it previously was I brought it to teaching and learning first, and then we would send it to finance, and then finance would send it to the board.
Yeah, it'll be all right.
You're good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we're sending it in the right direction with whatever motion we do here on this. Any other discussion in regards to it? With that, I'll look for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to provide a positive recommendation to the Finance Committee to purchase Discover Education for $16,000 using Common School Library Aid.
I will second.
Mr. Pollock with the motion, positive recommendation to the Finance Committee. Ms. Higginbotham with the second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That concludes our work. Covered a lot tonight. Appreciate a lot of the built-in information ahead of time in previous meetings helped us work through some of this stuff. Anyone that's viewing this meeting specifically on items A and C here and wonders why there's not a lot of discussion here is it's already happened in some pretty good depth in previous meetings. This was the final step in the process. So with that, I'll take item 8 on final motion.
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Mr. Pollock with the motion to adjourn. Ms. Higginbotham with the second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 6:51.